Welcome everybody to our virtual SciEngage meeting here. My name is Jeff Hunt. I'm the Director of LabX at the National Academy of Sciences. And this is sort of a quasi-monthly online meeting that we've tried to host over the past couple months on different topics. So this is me. I'd like to introduce my co-organizer who's sitting behind a black box camera. And that is Emily Cloyd. Emily, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. This is Emily Cloyd. I'm the director of AAIS's Center for Public Engagement with Science and Technology. We very much enjoy these meetings. Before we get started, I just wanted to make one really quick announcement about this month's AAIS annual meeting. As many of you know, at the start of the meeting on Thursday, February 14, we have a Communicating Science seminar. You may have tried to register for it in the past couple weeks and found that it was full. I have good news. We have lots more seats. So if you are coming to the meeting, I encourage you to come to the seminar. It is free to attend for the seminar, even if you are not coming for the rest of the AAIS meeting. So you can attend that day. It will be a little crowded when we get to the afternoon breakout sessions, but there will be lots of space in the networking fair. So if you were thinking of coming and were put off by seeing that it was full, hooray, it is no longer full, and we hope to see you there. So with that, are we ready for our speakers?
Yeah.
All right. So I will turn it over to our team from NABI and ARIS.
Susan, you want to kick things off? I don't know who exactly from the team is here. I saw Jory and Janice, and I think Megan's on. We are going to start with Susan Reno from the University of Missouri, and she will introduce the rest of the squad and tell us all about what ARIS is, what it stands for, what it's doing.
Jeff, can you show the slides?
Absolutely. Oops. Sharing.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to have as many participants as we see on the screen. I'm Susan Reno. I'm coming to you from the not so frigid Midwest. I feel like we're having a heat wave. It's 25 today, so that's pretty awesome. On our way towards 50, we hope, over the weekend, so that's a little bit more reasonable. I'm the PI for the NABI grant, but also for the ARIS grant. So my job is to sort of tee things up, give you a little brief overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to some of our team members who are here today. Not everybody can join us, but most of the heads of the 4 focus areas are here with us. And in a few minutes, I will ask them to introduce themselves. So first thing I have to tell you is that if you have been on the NABI journey with us, you know that we love to change our name. That happens all the time. So if some of you are around for Bionic, you'll know that NABI at one time was called Bionic. We thought that was a really clever acronym. Our team that's not our gift. I keep waiting for NSF to create the acronym machine or acronym wizard. We can just put stuff in there and it'll shoot it out for you. So NABI at one time was called Bionic. It was switched to NABI. If you were to look up this award number, it would tell you CASER. It would be the Center for Advancing Societal Impacts of Research. That is still the title of the center, but now we go by ARIS, which is our mission statement, Advancing Research Impact in Society. So if you are a little bit confused, hopefully you won't be, but ARIS is the name of the center. So I had to put that up there to begin with. Couple things that I want to tell you is that this is not NABI 2.0. So that's one of the things that I know people want to know is sort of what will be the difference between NABI and ARIS and what's the relationship between them. And one of the things I want to say is that the grant that we currently have that funds NABI is a Research Coordination Network grant from NSF, and it is specifically for building a network. And it has done that We've been able to stretch it due to the great volunteer work from people all over from the community, but it's really meant for building a network. So ARIS is designed to take that network to the next level, to give it more resources, to give more opportunities for us to be able to take what we've learned with NABI and really try to put that into something that could even bring more support to our community. So one of the things that you'll notice is that NABI will remain the same. NABI won't change. There will be some transition things that happen as we come off the grant at the end of the summer and transition it into whatever it's going to become next. But it is supported still through the ARIS grant. We'll still have the summit. There will be lots of opportunities for everyone in the NABI community to start thinking about what the next iteration of NABI is and what that looks like. But you won't really notice a difference. The listserv will stay the same for the moment. With the new center, there's of course more funding. You can see the NABI grant was originally $499,000. This grant is substantially more. There'll be more resources, and we'll be transitioning hopefully to a different, more modern communication tool besides just having a listserv. But in terms of NABI and its membership, it's the same. There are no members of ARIS, but there will be continue to be members of NABI. Same great community, just more resources and more opportunities. And those opportunities will be national, but also global. In the grant, we've talked about how do we partner with our global friends and colleagues who are doing the same work. So what I want to say about NABI and ARIS is that ARIS is designed to serve the NABI community. It doesn't take the place of it. NABI's not going away. Really, the center is designed to provide more resources for our community. So that being said, a couple of really cool things about this grant. One, it's funded by the Office of Integrated Activities, but if you look, every NSF directorate has put money into this grant. And that's a huge thing. The fact that we know that broader impacts is beyond just the Office of Integrated Activities or bio, but to actually have money put in by every directorate is a big deal. So that shows the real commitment to this in this space. The other thing too is that I sometimes still pinch myself to think that NSF gave us $5 million to do this work. That really, again, shows the commitment that they have to broader impacts and to taking it to the next level. And that's the thing about ARIS is that you'll notice that in the title, you don't see broader impacts anywhere. We have the National Alliance for Broader Impacts, but it's not the ABIS Center. It's not the Advancing Broader Impacts in Society. It's Advancing Research Impact. So one of the things that we are working on in the center is how do we move from a BI-focused community to a research impact focused community, including more areas than just STEM, but also thinking about knowledge translation and knowledge mobilization. So we really want to be at the cutting edge of what it means to think about how research impacts society in a broader way. You can switch slides, Jeff. So I didn't make a list of all the people who are involved in the center. To be honest and very candid, I put this slide together at the last minute. Sorry. So I didn't get a chance to put everybody on there, but this is an example of the logos from everybody who's involved. And you can see that it's everything from AAAS to the University of Missouri, of course. But if you look, we have land grants, we have publics, we have privates, we have national organizations, we have funders who are involved in this. We also have international partners. So we have someone from the Rathenau Institute in the Netherlands, as well as our friend David Phipps from York University in Canada, who is part of Research Impact Canada. So we're really looking at how we can broaden the leadership of this particular center, but also think about it internationally and globally. Keep going. Next slide, please. So this is a really cool graphic that one of our training team put together that shows the three big thrusts of ARIS. Training is a huge component. One of the things you're going to see is professional development opportunities and resource development opportunities. Partnerships is one of the pieces of that triangle, and also fellowships. I'm going to talk really briefly about the partnerships part, and then the rest of our team is going to introduce themselves, but also talk about their parts in that. So partnerships is myself, Kevin Nemi from Wisconsin. Kevin is the lead of this focus area, but he couldn't join us this morning. And Tom Tuban from Madison Area Technical College. And partnerships for the center are going to be really important. So we don't have any members in the center, but we are hoping to have affiliates. We're hoping that we're going to have people who want to partner with us in the work that we do. Oh, I'm like, I thought, Jeff, are you muting me? So we want partners to be involved in the work that we do, from funding organizations to professional organizations to other NSF-funded centers. Partnerships are going to open doors for us to be able to share the resources that we have, but also maybe even open us up to more resources. And so we see partnerships, fellowships, and training all working together in sync. Now I'm going to pass it off to Julie Rizian, who's going to talk about fellowships.
Okay, hi everybody. So glad to be able to talk a little bit more directly to folks about this. I'm sure most of you, I recognize a lot of names, have already heard about the fellowship program. Just want to do a quick sound check, make sure everyone can hear me okay. Just one person could answer that. I guess so. Jeff? Yes? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
So one of the things about ARIS in terms of serving the NABI community and the whole kind of infrastructure that supports the research community and developing their research impacts and enhancing their practice is that ARIS really wanted to both build the strength of the community through the training, but also through a fellowship program, and also build the amount of resources available to the research community. So we thought we would kind of combine these two things into one, and it's really exciting that we were able to kick off pretty quickly with launching our fellowship program. So the actual initial year of our fellowship program just closed yesterday. Apologies. Just closed yesterday, and we had about 30 applications for the first year. But let me just tell you a little bit about the program. So the goal really is to increase the quality and availability of scholarship and resources about research impacts. So it's service to both the community that supports developing research impacts and directly to the investigators who need that kind of support and product. So some of you might be familiar with the NABI's Guiding Principles document, and that turned out to be a really great sort of mediating piece for conversations about broader impacts. And what we wanted was more targeted versions of that kind of thing, a product that someone who supports broader impacts or someone who does SciComm trainings could use to talk to investigators about different things that they might be doing for their broader impacts. So we chose to focus the first year on, I think we have 3 areas: evaluation, synthesis, creating research impacts through broadening participation, sort of synthesis type projects, or designing research impacts in the fundamental physical sciences and or mathematics, which many of you who support broader impacts might realize that's one of the hardest things to do, is to help scientists and researchers in our fundamental physics, fundamental mathematics, to really define broader impacts that connect to them and connect to the communities that they want to be engaged with. So fellowships apply, the fellows apply, they get a small amount of funding, but they are engaged in peer learning communities, and the ultimate success of the fellowship is that each person or each fellow project develops a product that's useful to the community. So where we're at right now is we just received our first round of applications. I'm really excited to dig into them. We'll be asking the community to do blind reviews with us. So some of you may get requests from me soon, actually, to review applications. And then in March, we'll be able to announce and launch the fellowship. I'm happy to take questions when the time comes. Megan or Susan, did you want to add anything else?
I think one of the things that the fellowships do for me is it shows that we're trying to take the money that we're getting from NSF and put it back into the community. So with NABI and that particular grant, we didn't have a lot of extra money to do anything that we really thought we needed to do. And so this is an example where we're taking money from NSF, but we're really trying to put it back out to the community and support the work and the priorities of our community. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, me too. It is really exciting, and it builds the the connection between the NABI community, but it's not just NABI, it's beyond NABI. We actually got quite a few inquiries from people in the health sciences. So we're really excited to start to see that expansion too with ARIS.
Okay, I think I'm up for the training initiative. Jeff, if you could switch to the next slide, that'd be great. All right, this is our training initiative, and really, as Susan said earlier, this is kind of the big crux of what ARIS wants to do. We want to take resources from the fellowship programs and develop trainings and really develop the resources and have them broadly disseminated to the interested audiences. The mission for our training initiative is to advance the individual and institutional capacity to communicate research impacts in society. I think the institutional capacity is something that we really would like to work on and focus on in addition to what we do with the individuals. Part of our training team consists of myself. I'm Megan Heitman from Iowa State University, and we also have the fabulous Janice McDonald from Rutgers University, and the training extraordinaire Jory Weintraub from Duke University. And Janice and Jory have gone all over the country, really, doing institutional trainings for NABI over the last couple of years. And we're going to continue to do those types of things, but also add in some others. I have some programs that we have, our courses and workshops, resource and curriculum development, and then expanding the institutional capacity that'll be further explained on the next slide. So this is kind of the framework that we're working with when we think about this arm of the ARIS Center. If you look on the left side, it's meant to be read from top to bottom, and then we kind of fill in the holes with our particular initiative on the right side with the diagram. So this ARIS Center initiative is the training initiative. It consists of the programs for workshops and courses and a program to expand institutional capacity for research impact support. That program is in the very, very early stages of being thought out, and we're going to ask the community a lot of questions in probably the coming 6 months or so to really flesh that out and decide what we want that to look like. For our workshops and courses, you can see some other little arms there that are feeding into the workshops and courses, and those are what we're doing to help develop those workshops and courses. We are currently at the very end stages of doing a needs assessment. And in fact, we created one poll question since we have a captive audience today and we wanted to do a little bit of evaluation. We did one polling question that I think Jeff could probably do now if he has that up. If you could just take that quick poll, then that'll give us some information about what the most important topic is that the community wants right now. I do have a longer survey that I will put out to everybody in a link in the group chat if you would be interested in taking 3 or 4 minutes to fill out the longer survey with all of the topics kind of we're thinking about. But these types of surveys will just give us some information about what we need to focus our attention on first, what's really the biggest need right now, and what we need to focus on first. All right, I had to get that off my screen here. So through these courses and the programs, these are going to yield different activities and products. We will have face-to-face trainings, such as our institutional trainings that we've done where we've gone to institutions and done trainings for those particular institutions. We will still be active at the NABI Summit. And we're also looking into doing some more regional training type stuff so that we can get out in front of people and do hands-on trainings. We're also going to be offering more webinars, similar to this, where we're live and interactive with people and they can ask us questions and then come up with some sort of asynchronous menu where people on their own time can pick from the range of topics that they want to look at. Also, the product from our institutional capacity support program is to really develop new research impacts infrastructure across the United States and actually globally, but developing some more infrastructure so that if people leave, the structure is still there at various institutions, that it will stay standing just if the people leave. And all of this goes to, which I think is the most important line, is the bottom, and that's who we serve. These are the audiences by which we serve. First and foremost, we have to serve the researchers. That's the whole reason we're here. We're helping with the impacts of their research and helping them get more support and funding for their research. We also want to develop more research impact professionals, those of us who support the researchers, who connect them with the resources that they need. And as you can see, that's also has a line that goes back into the infrastructure. Those will feed into each other. As we build more infrastructure, we'll be training more RI professionals. As we train more RI professionals, we're hopefully getting more infrastructure in there. And the infrastructure program will also focus on institutions and professional societies as we're building that structure. I will put right now, hopefully if I got the right link. There we go. In the chat box, for those of you who are online, I'm not sure if on the phone, you probably won't be able to look at it now, but I just put a link to a longer survey, which is a short little needs assessment. If you could click on that and go, it takes about 3 or 4 minutes after the webinar is over. That would really help us get our focus on what's the first things that we need to get out to our audience, to those people we serve. What are they wanting, and what do we need to focus our efforts on first? So that's where we're at right now with the training initiatives. We have some really exciting stuff going on. We're really taking I think a really good path to really be intentional and look at course development and the competencies and really look at the curriculum of our trainings and do it all based on what our audience needs.
Jeff, can you advance to the next slide, please?
Yes, and I'm just going to note that I'm going to end the polling now. So we've got 75%.
So some shameless promotion to have up while we're answering questions. We are so excited to be heading to, especially for me right now, to warm Tucson. I think if I left today, my body would probably go into shock from the extreme temperature change. But we're really excited to be having the Broader Impact Summit in Tucson. It is April 30th through May 2nd. We have lots of really exciting things happening, including a wonderful dinner at Biosphere 2, which you can see here. Registration is now open. I signed up yesterday, so make sure that you get in there and sign up. But the other thing is that something of this magnitude takes a lot of building. And so you saw in the chat box that we're right now building the infrastructure. So we have a web address, but there's nothing there right now. But in the meantime, our company is building the website. All those things are moving behind the scenes right now. But the fact that training is already continuing to happen and that the fellowships are out, those are some things that are forward-facing, but there's a lot happening behind the scenes. And all of it is careening wildly out of control to coincide with the summit. So at the summit, we'll be doing a lot of like hooray for NABI, and NABI is wonderful, and reviewing the last 5 years of the NSF grant that we had, and then looking towards the future. So we'll be debuting ARIS and the new website and really the new, some of the updated logo and imaging and everything, and setting a course for the future of ARIS. But we'll also be spending a lot of time talking about what comes next for NABI. With the RCN, we had a lot of restrictions about who had to be on the leadership team because of the regulations from NSF. Once that grant ends at the end of July, those regulations come off. And we've always wanted NABI to be a community grassroots kind of organization. So there'll be lots of opportunity for feedback on what you'd like, what resources you'd like the center to provide for the community, but also to talk about what's next for our community and what's next for NABI. So I really encourage you to come. There will, of course, be opportunity for people who don't get to come to the summit to be a part of the train-the-trainer sessions, to be a part of the conversation we have about the transition, but a lot of that will happen at the summit. So I'm encouraging you to come. And now, Jeff, I think our part is done. We're ready to answer questions.
Excellent. So I think probably the easiest is people type their questions into the chats, and then we will funnel them to. All right, let's do that one too.
Julie, I think you have to answer, or Sarah might have to answer that question.
Well, Sarah and Megan, please chime in. From the questions I was getting out, I haven't actually had a chance to see the applications yet. From the questions I was getting, we actually had quite a few faculty who were ready to synthesize some things that they had worked on in the past and add a little bit of value to it. And we actually, I know we got quite a few graduate students, more than I expected. It may be that the graduate students are more inclined to write and ask questions, though, so that may be a little bit of a skewed sample. Megan or Sarah, I didn't know if you wanted to chime in there.
Hey, yeah, Julie's right. We did have a great mix of faculty, students, but also we had quite a few BI professionals. And well, honestly, I could recognize their names, so that's how I knew that they were BI professionals. And we had a wide range of institutions that applied. I mean, we did have one institution that seems to be a little bit overrepresented, but I can't blame them because they really are part of the home of the Engage Scholarship Consortium. So, but we had a good mix of fellowship applications, and I'm really excited to be able to dig into them.
And that was the voice of Sarah Vassmer, who you may or may not know. She is the program coordinator for NABI, but she is now the director of operations for ARIS. So if anything goes wrong, you should ask Sarah.
And Sarah, I can start to address this education research and scholarship in ARIS. One of the ways that we're doing that is through the fellowship program. So fellows could apply to do two different types of projects. One is to synthesize the evidence that's already out there on kind of one specific topic around research impacts. So kind of distill and provide an easy access, usable tool for investigators and broader impact support people to help in their design or their evaluation. The other is kind of new horizons research, so small scale research that would advance what we know about practice. And so we did get some applications. And again, this is just like Sarah said, I recognize some of the names from the education research community. So some of the applications did come in for the kind of New Horizons scholarship option of the fellowship program.
So I noticed that on the call today is Douglas Spencer from Edu Inc. They are our external evaluator. And someone asked what our current evaluation plans were for ARIS. Douglas, would you be willing to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I want to make sure everyone can hear me. Okay, good. So the evaluation plans for ARIS really fall into two buckets. The first is progress and performance. Is ARIS meeting the goals that they set? And so far what we're seeing is that ARIS is not only meeting the goals, they're actually aggressively exceeding some of the early goals. So the first is the center doing what it set out to do? But the bigger question here is, how is the center providing value to the community? And how is the community providing input that helps direct the center in a way that's valuable to the community? So a big part of the evaluation in the first 2 years is really getting a dialogue so we're able to hear from you guys. So we understand what the needs of the community are, so ARIS is in a position to address those needs in a way that provides value. Now, in terms of the specifics of the evaluation, ARIS is, as you're hearing, have divided themselves into 4 initiatives. So through the evaluation, we're looking at each of these 4 initiatives, progress and deliverables. But then we're really looking at how is something called centeredness. How is the center working together where it's one boat rowing in the same direction? And then to finalize the comments on evaluation, the big question here is what's different at the end of year 5? how has ARIS made a significant change in the broader impacts landscape? Now, here's the caveat. ARIS is not the people you're seeing in front of you, and it's not the staff of ARIS. ARIS is the collective effort of everyone who's involved and interested and motivated to make a difference through broader impacts. So the real question for the evaluation is, how do we work together as a group, the entire broader impacts community, to really make a significant change on the broader impact landscape, both within the US and to a certain extent internationally. And our belief is that's the kind of change NSF is looking for, and one of the primary reasons that ARIS was funded. Susan, is there anything you'd like to add? Or
I think that's good. The other thing we didn't mention is we talked about having 4 focus areas. The 4th focus area, besides training, partnerships, and scholarship, is operations. One of the things that we wrote into the original proposal was that we wanted to make a center that was flexible and fluid enough to adapt to the changing needs of the community. So a couple questions that came in is, one of the questions that was asked was, how can people be more involved with the boots on the ground work besides filling out surveys and attending the conference? Part of it is you're going to see lots of ways that you can give input into what we should be doing. So that's the first thing. And I know that seems not very exciting, but as you know, needs assessments and making sure that we're providing what people need is really important. There will be lots of ways for people to be involved. Douglas, I think, said it very well, that ARIS is the collective work of all of us. Thinking about how we move things forward. So there will be, besides the fellowships and scholarship part, ways for us to think of working groups, ways for us to think about tasks groups. And that also will be coming out of the NABI side. NABI has to continue to grow and evolve and change. And so there'll be lots of ways for people to put their input in. We're working on a regional train the trainer model. That's something that we talked about doing for the last 5 years and have not done very well. That is in the plans for the next 6 to 18 months. So there'll be lots of ways for people to do this. The question that Dennis asked was, what is planned to engage the end users of the BI effort? And if you look at our advisory board, we have tried very hard to include representatives from those end user groups, from NSTA, the National Science Teachers Association, to minority serving institutions, etc. So our plan is to absolutely engage the end users in all the things we're doing, because local impact is local. Impact happens in lots of ways, but it happens in our community. So keeping in mind the people who are our partners in this effort would be really important.
And just this is Julie, just to address Dennis Schatz's question a little bit more about engaging the end user. One thing that occurred to us with the fellowship program is we have the opportunity to experiment with it and then kind of adapt it each year, kind of as we better understand the gaps in information. And one gap that I see that I think as NABI continues to grow and is starting now to reach more into the school system, we're getting more teachers that come, more people who are outreach professionals at agencies. And like we had at the Oregon one or the Washington one, we had some folks that work for the state. So as that grows, we'll maybe have access to more people who could become fellows and share resources from the other side of the perspective, right? So I think it wouldn't be great to have a group of PIs say, this is how you work with schools. So it would be much better would be a group of PIs and a group of people who from within the school system have worked together successfully, saying, here's what we've learned about the best practices for success here. So that's one area we can evolve toward end users a little bit more.
So I have a question. This is obviously NSF funded, and the focus has been on sort of broader impacts, broader capital impacts. How do you see sort of NABI and ARIS contributing to sort of the lowercase broader impacts beyond just those who are funded or are involved with the National Science Foundation?
That's a great question. One of the things that we put under our objectives around operations was to expand broader impacts beyond NSF. And I don't know what we were thinking when we wrote that. Like, it seemed like it's easy to type that, but it's much harder to do. And so I think I look back at what we did 2 years ago and I think, what were we thinking? The good news is that is part of what we're trying to do is there will be the logistical parts of providing resources and opportunities for our community, but also we want to be thought leaders in the space. There are many colleagues around the world who are thinking about research impact. And so beyond just the STEM fields, social science and humanities, the arts, how do we bring those into this conversation? We're starting to hear some hints about NIH picking up some things. We know that the USDA talks about broader impacts some. Part of our job with the ARIS Center is to start having these conversations at higher levels with other agencies to see where they're at, what they're thinking. I don't know that that involves legislation or policy yet, but I know that that is on our radar. But also thinking about how we move from an activity-focused group to an impact-focused group. And that involves evidence-based activities, broader impacts activities. That involves evaluation and assessment. It involves gathering aggregated data. It also involves documenting and reporting that. So how do we start moving towards that? If you look at some of the things that they're doing in the UK and abroad with their national impact strategies, we don't have a national impact strategy. I don't know on my campus that I even have a local impact strategy. So again, we're trying to think about how we can be thought leaders in this space and start to shape the thinking here in the United States about what this means before it's, congressionally mandated in a way that we may or may not agree with.
So this is Julie, and just to add on to that, Jeff, it's a great question, and we're very aware of how we talk about broader impacts, and although we're all quite deeply embedded in the habit of talking about broader impacts and the assumption that that's, broader impacts, capital B, capital I, we have been very aware of that as we're trying to sort of transition into ARIS, which, as Susan had said, is not NABI 2.0, it's something different. And so some of the pathways to moving beyond the agencies, but also beyond the boundaries, maybe around that broader impacts language, is engaging with the folks who are talking about responsive science, engaged science, civically oriented science, community-based science. There's all these other pathways to impact that are actually, some of them more integrated and maybe more difficult to define as an add-on to research. Broader impacts is kind of clean in that way, just because of the history of it. So I think that sort of addresses some of the questions about it is beyond the agencies, and it is beyond what we think about as broader impacts. It's more about the research community being better equipped for their science to have positive impact in society.
And I love the question that Caitlin asked, and we definitely are going to be including nonprofits, other funders, other organizations. We cannot move the needle on this only focusing on federal funders. At the same time, it goes back to the question that's asked about institutional support. We know that a lot of the ways that we show value for the work we do on our home institutions is how we provide value added for research grants. So we know that we also have to think about that across those agencies. So it'll be definitely a mixed way to get that done. There was a question, the institutional part, talking about promotion and tenure. Promotion and tenure is huge, right? None of us think that it's not what we need to be focusing on. The truth of the matter is moving the needle on promotion and tenure will be bigger than ARIS, but we will be part of that conversation. Toby Smith, I don't think, is on today, but one of the things he talks about is not only do we need to think about where we want promotion and tenure to go, but what are the roots of promotion and tenure, and how did we get where we are so we can understand that, so we can help making that bigger. The other thing that we didn't talk about here is the award structure. So we've been talking about awards with NABI for about 4 years. We are in the process, and there's a group of people selected from NABI. Thank you for all the people who volunteered to be on that committee, who is putting together a really robust award program that will be debuting sometime probably this summer for the first awards to be offered in the fall. They will be individual and institutional. So there'll be incentives for institutions to provide infrastructure, incentives for them to provide support for this work, but also honoring the individual things that are happening, as well as looking at the portfolio. So if you've been involved in impact work for a long time, we want to recognize that. So yes, awards are definitely part of the conversation.
And I will say too, on the promotion and tenure and just the general advancement and reward system of universities and science organizations, there are a lot of foundations, and I see Eric on here, that are funding work in that area. There's certainly a lot of interest from the associations, APLU and AAU and others. So it's APLU has a pretty large initiative around public interest research, and they're also thinking about the structures that kind of hold back not just this, but teaching and all kinds of other things. So ARIS PIs and ARIS advisory board members are very engaged in those conversations and that work.
So I have another question. This is more for everybody who's on this discussion and sort of thinking about your perspective and sort of where you're coming from, either a university or a foundation or some other institution. Sort of how do you see yourself and your organization playing a role in ARIS? I think it'd be interesting to hear those perspectives. You know, Caitlin, you asked about the role of, for example, HHMI. Sort of, you know, what are you thinking about how HHMI can play a role? Or I see Eric Marshall's on Cowboy, sort of, you know, how can these different institutions buy into this concept, and sort of where do you see yourself?
Well, hi, Jeff and everyone. This is Eric Marshall from the Cowboy Foundation to speak up to that answer. I think many of the folks on this webinar have been involved in some of our efforts to look more broadly at the field and, you know, what's needed to advance the field. So certainly ARIS and NABI are on the forefront of that effort, and there are a number of examples of needs of the community to support the efforts and, you know, especially with the, you know, looking to academic advancement. We're working with many of you and the national academies. There will be a convocation to look at, you know, the transformation of advancement and promotion and tenure, and how it really needs to keep up with the realities. So I think we're very eager to be someone who is really there to take the broad picture and to support the field more generally, and to break down silos and barriers between different subcultures, all working towards the same goal. So we're really happy to see this development and all the interest and great leadership of this effort.
This is Eve. I can actually just chime into that. Can folks hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I'll just say, you know, for those of you who don't know, I'm part of a collaborative project that involves several of the members of the new ARIS team, the Broader Impacts Design Project. And I would say, you know, one of my worst fears is that we are going to go through our years of this project and it'll be wrapped up, and the entire time it will have existed in a vacuum, and it'll just sort of, you know, we'll put a bookend on the end of it and it'll just disappear into history. And my real hope for being involved with the ARIS community is that what we're doing can be woven into the other resources and efforts that exist out there. So, you know, pieces of what we've produced become pieces of other efforts, and that they all sort of reinforce one another. That's my real hope.
Yeah, Eve, that's a really great point, and thanks for making it, because one thing that, you know, ARIS, like everything else, is funded by NSF, and the funding, you know, there's a horizon. It seems really far out there, but it's going to come very, very quickly. Having said that, it is a lot more money for infrastructure and resources and curation of those resources. And so for some of the shorter term NSF projects, or things that projects that are developing products that might otherwise sort of not find their permanent home, we are hoping that ARIS can be that. It'll be interesting to see how we're able to do that towards, you know, the end of 5 years. And I'm sure there's folks on this call who have lots of ideas about how we should already be thinking about that now. And we are thinking about it. but there's certainly a home at ARIS for resources that can enhance research impacts.
I think that one of the questions someone asks is, what is the problem we are trying to solve? I'm going to open up to a lot of different people to answer that. But one of the things that I think is a problem with NSF, and I've told this when I've been there at NSF, is that they have funded a lot of resources in the broader impacts arena. Broader impacts wizard being a prime example of it, NABI being a prime example of it, that still many people do not know about. There is not one place that is centrally located on the NSF website where they even give broader impacts resources. So part of that is what, following what Julie said, is we do want to be a place where people can put this information so that it's documented someplace, so that there is one place somebody can go to find this information. And it doesn't have to be that we own it. It is us linking out to the bid project or linking out to what somebody is doing. But if you want to know something about broader impacts, you know that there's a place where you can send people, and there's a good chance that whatever is out there will be in one place. You know, I think the other thing too, and there's several problems that the center is trying to address. One of them is the issue of us as professionals. You know, I didn't grow up saying I want to be a BI professional. I don't even know that there's actually seriously a good answer for what that actually is, right? I tell people that when people ask my husband what I do, he says something with grants. You know, it's hard sometimes to explain the work that we do, but it is a profession, part of a larger profession. And there are the next generation of people coming up who want to do this work. And so what is it that we do? Jeff Hunt, I did not want to be a professional basketball player when I grew up. Thank you very much. I wanted to be Indiana Jones when I grew up, and he's still on my desk. In any case, the point is that we want to be able to show this as a viable profession and see that there are ways that we do things and help us advance in our careers. So the training has a lot to do with that. We also want to help solve the problem, I think, of, you know, what are high quality broader impacts? What are evidence-based broader impacts, to get away from just doing activities for activity's sake to doing things that are based in research and have the ability to actually have the impacts that we want them to have. I always tell people that I think broader impacts are broken because we're expected to do transformational, amazing things with a little bit of money, and maybe not always with the expertise, at least researchers don't have, to do those things. So how do we raise the bar for researchers so they can lower the silos, they can find the community partners they need, they can have access to the evidence-based research that they need to make good choices, so that all of a sudden we're actually having the impact that we want to have.
So there's a question that came in on the difference between ARIS and CASE, and Jamie, I don't know if you want to chime in here and say a little about that.
You're talking about distinctions.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of complementary activity here, which I think is great. So, you know, we've been following NABI from the beginning, from its inception, and been big fans of the work that NABI has done, and we're delighted to know, you know, that when ARIS was funded, because it just is a natural extension of that work, and that, you know, our I think collective belief that broader impacts is a big area, and there's lots of different types of broader impacts, and the field of work, although it may be, you know, as Susan said, not something that everybody on the street understands, is vast, and there's a great need in universities, and not just universities, but also in private entities. But, you know, CASE is really focused on the informal STEM learning community. That is to say, folks who design activities, engagements, environments and settings for learners of all ages. There's an assumption that people are learning STEM in the environments that we support. And, you know, we will continue to do that in a couple of ways. One is through the repository of informalscience.org that we built, and will continue to build, where people can find a scholarship, research, evaluation reports, and so on. But a lot of our community is not, especially traditionally, university-based. So we have a lot of people working in informal science education institutions, organizations that are not universities and not connected to universities in such a way that they don't necessarily have access to a knowledge base like or a database like EBSCO, for example, which we make available to people who are members of informalscience.org. So we see this as ARIS and the plans that NABI and ARIS have going forward as something very complementary to what we're doing. And as several of you have said, including particularly Eric Marshall, I think there's quite a bit of momentum now across the landscape of people who are basically trying to elevate science and STEM into its rightful place in our society, the importance of it, the relevance of it. And so there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination going on between education, communication, engagement, broader impacts. And I think if we all think of it in that way, and we do our own niche work as well as we can, there's just so much more possibility for what's sometimes called collective impact, but in the broadest sense of that term.
So there's been a bunch of back and forth about sort of internal workings of NSF, which I'll leave for people who know much better than I, but one of the chapters and get the session there, listing of some resources. If I missed any questions. Anybody want to add anything else?
I think there was a question I didn't want to see, which was about resources and DOIs. And I'm not sure if Megan or Susan might have a more up-to-date information about the curated resources that we would like to put together. I don't know what the status is, but certainly we are thinking about that. Do you guys want to tackle that?
Sarah, do you want to talk about what's happening with American Eagle and the Open Science Framework?
Well, I don't know exactly what's happening. Originally, we had used Open Science Framework, and because of how NABI was situated, it was created as a conference type repository. So it was originally designed for people to actually upload their own resources onto our page. And so that isn't necessarily going to work. So American Eagle, who's in charge of building our website and not necessarily curating those resources, but exploring ways to curate those resources so we would have a place for those to stay that would be easy to access for everybody rather than having to kind of go through the rigmarole of Open Science Framework. OSF is great, but it just didn't quite meet our needs in this particular time.
We also have here on our campus through our library something called MoSpace, which is where faculty can upload their documents sort of in their data management plan. So there definitely will be lots of ways for us to put information in and get that information back out. So we're working on that right now. I want to read Polly's question in case people missed it. I'm curious if other institutions find their BI influence framed within, framed within the context of pressures to increase enrollments and support workforce development needs. I think it's relevant to consider since the whole idea of BI, as I understand, is to integrate research with broader societal concerns. So I am, by all admissions, a BI nerd, and I read things that most people probably don't want to read, like the PAPG from NSF, like the legislation that we have that legislates BI. And if you look between the American Peace Reauthorization Act of 2010 and the American Innovation and Competitiveness Act of 2017, I think, the same list of BI societal outcomes are there, but they've been flipped. And they go from education and broadening participation from being at the top to economic development, security, workforce development, all those things being at the top. And people say it's not significant because the information is still there. I think anytime somebody takes their time to flip something that they didn't have to flip, I think that's significant. And part of what ARIS was specifically asked to do is to help our researchers be able to think about how they couch their research in terms of workforce development, in terms of economic competitiveness, in terms of national security, because those are the things that are important to our legislature right now. So helping our researchers frame their research in different ways also helps NSF making the case for funding. So that is absolutely part of what ARIS is doing, but absolutely part of what we do every day here at the University of Missouri with our researchers.
Any final comments, questions from anyone? Hearing none, seeing none. I'll just say thank you to Susan and Julie and Megan and everybody else from the NABI/ARIS team for joining us and talking us through this topic, which I'm sure everybody is really excited to hear about, because it's sort of been percolating, but finally got the experts to talk about it. And just logistically speaking, the video recording of this discussion will be posted online on the AAAS websites, and Sarah asked if the survey will be emailed out to the NABI listserv. We can also include a link to this video in that email. So it's all in one place. One last question. Susan, you can't make it to NABI, is there an email?
Oh, absolutely. So there will be a lot, once we get through the summit, we'll have lots of information for everybody. The website will be live. There'll be lots of things interactively. Absolutely. Yes, we'll be sending information out very broadly. And thank you all for being on this call today. Thank you for all your support of what we've been trying to do. And really, if there's anything you think of that we could do to be better, please let us know, because that's what we want to do. We want to be serving you. So.
Great, and apparently I've been talking quietly and nobody can hear me. One final thing is we, like I said, try to do these virtual meetings on a monthly basis. We are very agnostic about the topic, so if you have a great idea for something that you want to present, please let me or Emily know, and we will be happy to schedule you. We have one on the books for next month, March 8th at 12 o'clock Eastern. We'll have Elise Auerbach from the University of Michigan talking about sort of more theoretical side of things in terms of typologies and frameworks related to public engagement. And so we'll be sending out some information about that in the next week or two. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Oh, and Emily will be talking. All right. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.